Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Sorry about that audio snafu. This is Richard Gayler in the booth, booked for solo commentary today due to some unforeseen issues. We are back with day 5 of the Galfond challenge. Phil currently in the lead, up 415,000 euros, just a little of about a fifth of the way into this challenge. Slated for 15,000 hands. Here we are, 2,700 hands in. Here we are, relocated to Party Poker due to how hard it is to move hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars around on the internet. Phil just won so much money on Run It Once. Here we are, where he has a fresh bankroll to scoop from our villain, Actionfreak. Oh my goodness, table 1, Freak gets it through. Table 2, Freak goes with it, saying, I just turned 2 pair, what's good? Some slow played bottom sets, potentially. Some 3-3, 4-4, king 10, 10-4. Maybe the occasional 10-5, 6-7, deciding to go with it. Phil in the cage. If he bet jams ace king jack here, he is a legend. I would be shocked to see that. It would be such a statement that he thinks Freak's turn raise here is super weak, very draw heavy. Big river for Phil's bet call. He's going to be slamming Broadway here quite often. Does he jam? This river certainly favors Phil's 2 pairs, middle 2s, top 2s, rivered queen 9, ace queens, and he should be leading here. SPR like 0.25 or something, 0.3. He should be leading here quite frequently. He plays as check, defending, possibly making the inference that his opponent, if he was raising turn with a draw, centered around the 3 and 4, will continue. Otherwise, maybe he's just super weak. Maybe a pair of kings with flush draw, trying to navigate to showdown. Freak deciding with whatever he raised turn with, can he value jam it on the river? King 10 on the turn, aces with spades on the turn as well. Very standard hand from both players. I like their play. During this solo cast, over under on number of glasses of water consumed. We're looking at another 5 hours to go or so, and we're 1 glass of water in. What do you think the line is, guys? Oh, it is May the 4th. Oh my goodness, we got it. Nick, if you are listening, we have some table names. Let's go with Luke and Vader. Alphabetically, table 1 Luke, table 2 Vader. Thank you, guys. May the 4th be with you too. The glass, it's about 7 inches. 7 inches, 8 inches on a good day, maybe, if I had to estimate. Roughly 0.8 hands, 0.8 hands tall, if that is a European measurement. How large my hands? Who knows? Large pot over here on table Luke. Does Phil rep the flush? Looks like 3-bet pot that probably went bet, bet, check. Bet, call, check, if I had to guess. Phil piling, saying, I have the flush. Whatever the line was, whether it was check, bet, or bet, call, check, bet, Phil has a combination of missed straight draws and flushes here. Freak should have slightly better, slightly higher flushes, assuming this is a 3-bet pot. Does he jam? Yes, he does, saying, I got the nuts. What you got? He could conceivably be taking something like ace jack 10 with the ace of hearts and bet, check, jamming it. Highly likely this was a 3-bet pot at this point, given Freak sticking all the money in. Phil in a very tough spot, only 16K to win 70. If we saw Phil show up with, for instance, ace 10 8 7 double, a modern 4-bet, or ace king queen 8 double, an old school 4-bet, that would give us a little bit of information about how he perceives Action Freak's, the construction of Action Freak's 3-bet call range. Preferring the ace 10 8 7 if Freak is more big pair heavy, and the ace king queen 8 if Freak is more rundown heavy. But we don't get to see. That's all the rundown I can give you. Ace king 4 two-tone, large favorite for Phil's 3-bet range. We see a third pot. You know, it just occurred to me, I have been casting off the stream, not the screen shared party poker tables. That's probably why the commentary is delayed, guys. I apologize. I'm going to switch over. Pot from Freak in position on the ace king 4-3. Does he have the deuce 5 possibly? Very strange, very hard to believe. All of Phil's timidly checked ace kings obligatory continues here. Maybe something like ace jack 10, weak flush draw, deciding to check call. Very tough spot for all of Phil's weaker hands, and he continues. Big river for the imposition player. Some of their floated 56 on the flop, rivering the straight, although all of the flush draws bricking. Phil should be continuing. If Freak decides to go with it, Phil should be calling pretty light here, as all of the flush draws missed. And then we have on table Vader, is it? Yeah, table Vader, getting the pot size bet, repping the flush through. I would be cautious, guys. Wow, deep in the tank for Freak, deciding, oh, he goes for it. What a bet. Phil crying, perhaps puking, if he shows up with something like ace queen 5-7. That 3-bet call, check called, checked, and rivered set for Phil, and he scoops, scooper duper, Action Freak value jamming river with top 2, no good. Oh, bad news, guys. No replays. I'm just going to have to be way on top of it. At this amount of rake, I believe table Vader was a single raise pot, half pot call on flop, pot on the turn, drama river, Broadway coming in. Does Phil value bet down to the queen high straight here? That is the question. Nernia saying river wasn't a brick. If we're still talking about the ace king 3-4-7 hand, 7's a relative brick as all the flush draws miss. Phil polarizing, saying he's got the queen high straight plus. He is potting it here because he has so many missed flush draws. Freak trying to decide what he does with, for instance, king jack 10. Probably calling. Tough spot for a lot of Freaks. Middle 2s, bottom 2s, top 2s, no straight blocker. Deep in the tank, and the queen high straight takes it down. 4-bet alert from Actionfreak starting around 1 1/3 stacks deep. Pretty deep dynamic flop here. King deuce 3 two-tone. Phil SPR2 deciding, does he donk jam? Thank you very much, Barbecue Sauce. Appreciate it. Glad you're enjoying. I believe the players are about equal right now. For I'm a Peppa Pig. And pot size bet from the in position player, trying to leverage his aces advantage. Does Phil consent? Yes, he does. All in, big pot. 80 Jeezys. Ace, ace, king against king, jack, 10, 9, flush draw. What a cooler. King on the turn, all but locking it up for Actionfreak. Clord, I'm not sure what racket you're talking about. Oh, P-breaks is an over-under we are not going to get into. 10-8-6, two-tone, 3-bet pot on table Vader. Large favorite to the in-position player. More straights, more two pairs, more sets. Does Phil go for a low-frequency large bet? Rafik understood. He goes for a small bet, implying that he's betting much more than I would expect here. The smaller the bet, the higher the frequency on a texture like this. Freak consenting off to the brick turn. Oh, I'm not sure why they have rockets next to their name. I haven't played on Party Poker. Good question. Phil deciding to pile this turn. Looks like a single raise pot that went check call on the flop and then check pot by Phil. Should have a slight polarity advantage here, but there are tons of draws for both players. Phil potting the 10-8-6 deuce and getting it through. Wow. What you got, says Freak, should have a strong mixture of sets, top twos, top and bottom with draws, and then big draws from the out of position player here. Phil possibly regretting potting this turn now. Does he call and take a river? The equities are quite dynamic here, so Phil could call and play rivers. Is he priced in? Does he have 33% minus the amount that he generates in EV from implied odds to call turn, needing something like high 20s? He thinks he does. Big river for the bet call range on the turn from Phil, smashing this offsuit 3, bringing in all of the lower straight draws, ace deuce 67, something like that. Consequently, our turn check raiser playing river as check, saying, okay, Phil, you've got straights, you've got a couple sets, and you've got a bunch of missed draws. Your turn to stick it in, SPR 0.3. Phil deciding whether he's game. Does he want to dance? Does he want to put the rest of the chips in? He says no, has queen 4 plus a Broadway draw. Top 2 with a rivered 3 pair. Three bet pot, king, queen, 4, two-tone over on table Luke, half pot sizing. We've seen this 3 times now on king, queen, 4, both rainbow and flush draw so far today. Looks like Phil has some standard sizings here. And a small raise in position, started around 130 BBs deep. Phil put in a tough spot here. Does he bet 3-bet rip his, for instance, ace, king, jack, nut, flush draw, top pair, nut, flush draw, gutter, or does he just bet call with some of his top pairs, maybe middle set, trying to go for the turn check raise? Unclear how he's going to continue here. A lot of his hands put in a very tough spot by this small raise. Great play by Actionfreak. Phil consenting, flush comes in on the turn. Phil should be playing check here almost all the time, although he could take a couple, for instance, jack 10 with jack of clubs to stab, turn, jam, river. He plays as check as he would with most of his traps, such as turned nut flushes, king high flushes. Also, if he was bet calling with a very strong made hand like top 2 or queen queen, he would continue to play those on turn as check. Most of his range should be checking here. Freak deciding, does he rep the combo draw on the flop, aka flush on the turn. Third pot setting up a very natural river SPR, something like 0.7, 0.75 to jam river. Phil, if he calls turn, knows he's almost certainly going to have to be calling it off on the river. However, if Freak continues all the time, as Phil talked about in one of his post-match commentaries a week ago, if Freak always continues on the river, Phil's not incentivized to call turn. So we should see some waterfalling frequencies where Phil has to call turn fold river and Freak has to bet turn check river some amount. Phil consenting, here we are to an unpaired river, and the 10 high flush, good for Freak. Doesn't jam it in there. Phil with bottom set. As I'd said, if he has the strong made hand bet calling flop, he has to play turn as check call versus such a small sizing on turn. He's very happy to peel, and then on the river, check, check, no good. Wow, interesting sizing here, something like SPR 7. Freak on table Vader just going for it, possibly something like ace 6-8. Most of his pots should be stacking off here. Phil raising, saying, I've got more made hands, I've got more sets, I've got more two pairs, and I've got some wraps. Don't expect to see very many low equity bluff raises here. Something like ace jack 6-7 would be surprised unless it has two backdoor flush draws. Pot repot. Here it goes. All the money, guys. Top two against aces with a gutter. Top two filling up on the turn. That's all she wrote. Big one over to Phil. We have the potential for a very large pot here. 130K pot potential on table Vader. Hopefully they don't reset them. Let's get some juicy action. These guys are swinging for the fences. Cool Jack AI, he actually had aces with a wheel draw, aka aces gutter, which at SPR 7 on that texture, I don't fault him for the bet jam. The in-position player should be raising flop with a lot of pair plus draws that ace-3 is doing just fine against, especially if he has a backdoor nut flush draw, aka another guaranteed 5% or so. Can't fault him, just a cooler. We have here a 3-bet pot, Phil playing the low dynamic board as a check. Scuba Steve asking SPR 7, the stack to pot ratio, the amount of money in their stacks to the amount of the money in the middle. It's a shorthand for figuring out where we are in terms of how much money is left to play. It goes check call on 6-4 deuce two-tone offsuit jack on the turn. Phil struggling to realize his equity here. SPR 5, SPR 4 and change. Tough spot for him. If Freak leverages it, he does. Pot size bet here. Oh my goodness. If he pots the turn, he can almost get stacks in on the river. Does Phil continue with his, for instance, overpair gutters, overpair 7-8, something like that? Tough spot for him. What you gonna do? The in-position player, Actionfreak here, saying he has two pair, set, combo draw, jacks up maybe. Big river for the in-position player, in my opinion, going to be having more higher quality straights. Phil struggling if he shows up with ace-5 here. What's he going to do if he's got a wheel and Freak pots it? Freak in the tank. Is he going to continue with his plan, potting the turn, setting up a river shove? Unclear. Unclear. The longer he thinks, the more I think he sticks it in. This would be a pretty nasty spot for Phil if he pots it. Tank, 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 tank. Pot question mark? Wow, cheeky little bet here, giving his bluffs a cheaper price. Phil with his overpairs confirmed crying right now. Freak saying, I've got a week straight, and you can't beat it. These are the parts of PLO that make you puke. Crying confirmed. Anything that Phil has, which is two pair here, has to snap. So by him taking his time, he probably has an overpair. If he had something like King, King 5, tough spot. I just don't see him winning here. I believe this bet. I believe this bet. And so does Phil. 3-bet over here by I Kontonatsios. Yeah, the pronunciation of that's not going to happen. Jaboy Actionfreak. Ace wheel wheel. Let's see if we see small bet or check out of him, as Phil has been doing. Small bet it is. Third pot. These guys have been in the sims running the solvers for sure. Beautiful thing to watch people playing such high-level POL while making adjustments to each other on the fly, coming in with their understanding of how to play the game, identifying how their opponent's playing, and then trying to exploit them for huge amounts of money. Pretty thrilling. Suited queen on the turn, improving some of the low equity bets from the out of position player, something like king, queen, jack 10 that stabs flop small, although I would expect that to be thrown into check on ace wheel wheel. Some of those hands improving. More higher quality two pairs and sets for the out of position player. He's leveraging those with a turn bet here. Super deep though. Could see a jaw-droppingly unbelievable pot-sized raise here from Phil, leveraging his slightly more 34. Would put Freak in a very tough spot if he did so. Instead, just a call. Phil trying to realize his equity or navigate to showdown. Now, the crux of the question is, does Freak want to value bet whatever aces up or set he has here, or does he want to bluff with his missed flush draws, missed gutters, maybe something like 8-8 that's just tripling off because he's got more top sets, and he goes with small bet saying, I've got a good hand, so do you, but mine's not good enough to pot it with. Instead, I'm going to bet small, make all of my bluffs super cheap, put all of your bluff catchers in a annoying position. Phil is going to have to call here down to something like ace jack if he doesn't want to be exploited, would be my guess. Ace jack ace 10 for this price. Does he consent? A raise here would be so sexy. I mean, if Phil repots it here, I gotta pause the stream, you know, just soak it in back. Oh my goodness. He goes for it, saying, I flatted the 34 on flop, flatted the 34 on turn. What you got? Actionfreak now going to have to bet call the top of his value range here, something like top set, or maybe aces up with a straight blocker. Phil putting him to the test. Get your YOLOs out in the chat. And the bet fold. Again, high, low, low board, great for the out of position player, as there's so much air for the in position player. Should see a small and wide bet here. If he mashed the pot button, I'd have to go back to the lab and try and understand what the hell is going on. Lord Bear, who are some of the oh my god, I don't know. Why is it when I ask for these things to happen and I don't expect them, they do happen? Maybe my subconscious is trying to tell me something, you know? Oh, oh wow. Stacks are flying. 4-bet over on table Luke. Big turn for Phil. He should be piling it in here. SPR 2.2. Expect to see the pot call. Also, another big flop for Phil on table Luke. 8-4-5 rainbow. Phil at SPR 1.8 gets to bet here. Maybe small, donking third pot and setting up a turn jam, leveraging his stack against the aces heavy range of the in position 4-better. And Phil checks on the king queen 4-3. Saying, I'm not trying to push you off one pair. Maybe he's got a trap. Maybe he's got some showdown value. He's trying to navigate to the river. Phil deciding not to lead the 8-4-5, missing possibly a very high EV flop lead. In position player going tiny. Oh, please put it in. Come on, Phil. Just put the money in. Just put the money in. You know you want to. Although he's going to have so many just clear check folds here. Something like king jack 10-9 double suited, you know, any ace high that just whiffs this board. Although if he does flop a pair, trust me, he's going with it. So, you know, there's a decent amount of hands he's going to be getting in here. But going deeper into the tank, it doesn't really matter about any timing tells here. The longer he waits, it doesn't really change the hand. This hand at this point in time is simply what the guys hold in their hands. That's all that matters. There's very little timing tells to be picked up on here. It's just, do you have the ability to realize your equity? How much equity do you have? That is the question. This turn should drill a couple of top pairs for Phil, although I would expect most of Phil's top pairs with, for instance, a 7 or 6 to be jamming the flop. Tiny bet on table Luke, pot size bet on table Vader. Freak saying he just rivered a wheel or a 6 high straight. After calling pot from Phil on the flop, turn check check, it is pretty credible. Hard to see what kind of hands he could be bluffing with. Maybe something like King Jack 10 6. Phil gives up. Now, over on table Luke, SPR 1, contemplating in this 4-bet pot what he does. If he has something like 5s or 4s, he's going to have to give those hands up, as on this turn, equities are now much more static. It's either it's a question of big overpairs for the imposition player and the very rare 8x after he time banks all the way down to 5 seconds. Do you think he really has trips? I don't know. And he takes it down. Phil's hands, basically everything Phil has once he sees that turn, if it doesn't stick the money in pretty quickly, is crying and isn't able to put the money in. Although there should be the occasional 4-bet bluff from Actionfreak, as in something like ace 10 9 6, ace 10 7 5 double, maybe the occasional queen jack 10 9, or I mean he'd take something raggedy, maybe something like queen jack 10 7, single suited, double suited, playing it as a 4-bet. So you'll see a couple 4-bet bluffs there. So the small flop bet, small turn bet, possibly not just aces, possibly not just 8x, could be an airball. That's why Phil's tanking down. Although he is looking him up with a capped range if he does continue, saying, okay, you've got a combination, possibly a concatenation of aces and queen highs, ace highs. So Phil's pocket queens, good sometimes, question mark. Hence him tanking and thinking about, does he stick the chips in? Here we have a pot developing on Luke. Looks like, I don't even know, 3-bet, check bet, or single raise pot, check bet would be my guess. Action now on Phil on the river. Does he continue after betting turn? He should be firing quite frequently here. SPR just under 2. Phil potting it, saying, I got ace king plus. Did he river 9-9 for another rivered set? We saw earlier in the day king 10 7-7, Phil rivering the effective nuts. And wow, there you go. Big cooler, top 2 against bottom set 3 blocker. Wow, 3-bet pot over here, ace 7 deuce 2-tone. Going to favor Phil a good deal. He agrees and pots it. I do not believe they have reset the stacks so far. Here we are 2 hours in, so roughly a couple hundred hands, maybe 300 hands in. Another 3 hours or so to go if these guys are in for the long run. And a call. Phil should be pretty happy with this turn. It's hard for Actionfreak to be calling with 7x on the flop unless it's 7x with hearts. Very, very difficult. Does Phil try and rep the ace-ace? He doesn't have to bet that large to set up stacks. Here he goes for a third pot, which if you add another 5K on there, you get 26, which is less than Phil's stack. He's wagering a sizing that does not let him jam the river, possibly saying he's not as strong as Nut top boat. Actionfreak being required to continue on this turn with almost all of his ace-x here. As the smaller Phil wagers, the wider Freak has to call on the turn. Bunch of draws breaking out, offsuit 10 on the river. Does Phil follow through? He has some very cheap bluffs on the turn, which now are squadouche. Does he go for it? I would be surprised to see a pot sizing given he chose a turn sizing that doesn't allow him to go all in. Expecting to see something smaller, but who knows? These guys are swinging for the fences. And tank, check. Phil with the air ball turned flush draw against, I believe, top pair ace jack with hearts. Is that what we saw? But anyway, jack 6-4 rainbow, 3-bet pot. SPR 5 looks like Freak has been potting textures like this. We've seen pot size bets on 9-6-4, 9-5-4 rainbow. Does he pot the jack 6-4 half pot? It looks like he's got a very nuanced POL game. Chip and a dream, I would consider it. Message me on Instagram. "12 cups of coffee in a day, you are a madman, Hawkeye." 8 glasses of water, I suspect you may be on the under there. Turn being a 6 of clubs, strongly favoring the out-of-position player Actionfreak, as all of his overpairs have significantly improved in value, although there will be a small density of trips that Phil turns, something like 5, 6, 7, 6, 7, 8. As a result, because the out-of-position player has more higher quality overpairs, he sizes down, having a polarity disadvantage, but an equity advantage. He sizes small here. Does Phil spring the trap? If he has a hand like 4, 7, 8, he might choose to raise here and try and bluff the Actionfreak off of his overpair. Jack X likely just calling down. Heads up for skins, I think you're a little off here. Actionfreak's playing extremely well today. Would not say he is on tilt. Also, given he's up money, Phil goes for it. What a raise. Clearly saying, if you call this turn, I'm going to stick the money in on the river. Do you want to call down with your naked queens, naked kings, naked aces? I must have said clearly about something because you guys think it's really funny. Oh boy. Super clear. Phil saying he has the 6x, possibly flopped 4-4, possibly flopped Jack-Jack, and Freak sticks it in. Oh my goodness. What you got, Phil? You just playing? Confirmed. Just messing with him. Wow. So Phil tank bluff raise and gets the business. Actionfreak piling it in. Caught red-handed. 3-bet from Phil. You know, I have thought about streaming, but it just gives away so much information for free, and it's hard to be consistent, you know? Here we are, 9-6 deuce rainbow. We've been seeing Actionfreak piling for pot when he's been in these shoes. Phil choosing a different strategy, betting the third pot here. Yeah, but Ari, you get paid for training videos. Monetizing a stream where you've got thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on the tables is not the easiest thing. Reverse info, I like how you think you blow. Phil deciding whether he piles this turn. Does he decide to go with it? Something like King, King, 10 of hearts? Nope, plays check. Oh, Kizza, we can do better than that. Sure hope it's more than that. And Freak deciding to check back. Big river for the in-position player, Actionfreak. Can we get an exclamation mark venue for JDav? And Phil, if Phil bets here, he's, I mean, hard to even say, man. Hard to even say. He's good. I mean, oh boy, calling and losing on Vader to the King High Flush. Phil doesn't really tilt. Kizza, hit me up on Instagram. Whatever. As long as it's not an OnlyFans, if you're talking poker, sure. Here we are, Phil playing a hesitant check on river. Actionfreak going to have to be value betting down to 5-7 cleanly, probably some 2 pairs with straight blockers, and Phil able to check pile here if he has something like Jack-Jack, 10-10. I knew you were kidding, Kizza. I knew. And here we are, Phil trying to decide, does he defend? The in-position player has a beefy amount of value combos. All of them saying, "You shall not pass to Phil." Phil, 15 seconds left in the time bank. Does he flick it in? I expect not. All right, guys, keep it clean for sure. And he calls and loses to a 10 high straight. Thank you, Nerd King raises. I'm slated to come back on the 9th, I believe. The more you guys want me to commentate, throw it in the chat. I mean, oh, you know what time it is. Oh. A little slow on that one. Sorry, Gus, but at this point, it's just, oh my goodness. 5-bet jam from Phil, super deep. What you got? Most of the 4-bet range, besides ace, king, should be stacking off, calling and playing their flop equity curve, or just getting it in pre. 3 seconds in the time. He calls. Oh my goodness. Do we see something like 5th pot and then jam? SPR 0.5, pretty easy to just shove flop, play a 1-street game, or just Phil, if he's got nut, want to play as a tricky trap. Generally a better flop for the in-position player, more straights, however, more better flushes for Phil. Hard to know what's right here. Phil playing as check, is it nut? Or is it something like king, jack 5, no diamond? You never know. We're about to find out, though. Too much money in the middle. Pretty crazy to imagine we don't get a showdown. But Factory thinks, okay, anyway, Factory thinks we've got dry AA. Could see it. Oh my God. Speaking of disrespectful and cheeky wagers, we have, what's it come out to? A 12th pot bet. We have the little 8% flop bet. Just teasing you. Oh, we've got some math pros in the chat. Snooper Snort throwing out the 7% bet. Yeah, could believe it. Don't have my calculator in front of me. And Phil in the cage, if he min raises here, this will be one of the greatest hands played in this challenge. Oh, he calls. Down to SPR 0.4. What you gonna do? Check again. Hard to even care about table Luke, where Freak is polarizing, representing a flush, because such a small pot compared to this 5-bet hand with check, 12th pot, call, check, and now does Phil put the money in, or does he try and get the showdown with his ace? Once Freak checks back turn, you're pretty sure that Phil's doing better here. It's hard to call a flop bet and then have the in-position player check back turn saying they don't really have it. But at this low of an SPR, he could be checking back extremely strong hands here because he's guaranteed to be able to get the money in on the river. Phil checking, saying he's got the ace. Come on, Phil. Let's have your aces hold. If this 20K goes in and Phil has naked aces, this is a tough spot. Don't want to be sitting in his shoes. He doesn't even go for all of it. Oh my God, the disrespect is to the maximum. The only reason you'd be doing this is if you have a value to bluff ratio where jamming is not appropriate, and that's such a high level play. This is probably just to mess with Phil. What's he gonna do? What a cheeky little river bet. Don't even need it all. Happy with saving 2.5K on his bluffs, getting 2.5K less when he has value. Maybe just trying to induce the mind games. What level is he on? Phil deep in the tank. 15 seconds left in the reserve time bank. Does he put the chips in? He needs to be good here so infrequently, something like 1 in 6 times. I'd have to do the math, though. And Phil folds by sitting out. Man, you hate to see it. What a hand, though. What a hand for Actionfreak. Got a little 3-bet pot. Kind of a lockdown texture, all things considered. Should be, at this stack depth, not too many check raises from the out-of-position player. Mostly playing as check bet call. Phil deciding if he wants to start the variance machine in motion. He does, wagering half pot. I like it. He should be betting very wide here. Something like over 60 or 70% of his range. Can basically bet with impunity here. Being so deep on a texture he's such a massive favorite on. 3 of hearts bringing even more draws. Phil deciding, does he want to narrow his value range even further by polarizing or keep it wide by half pot? My 3000 BB poker is rusty, Froggen. Haven't played a 1 cent, 2 cent home game in a long time. Here we have Phil putting the money in. Oh my goodness. Trying to put max pressure on all of the overpair plus flush draws that Freak's going to have. Also allowing him to put as many bluffs as possible into his turn betting range. Indeed, streams down, press F, F to pay respects. And a call. Nuts have not changed. All the draws bricked. SPR 1.2, does Phil stick the money in? I want to see it. I want to see it. Does Phil stick the money in? And he's loading the gun. Man, Gabe Kaplan commentating this would be something, huh? Oh, there it is. Pot. Saying he's got something like 4-8 plus. If he shows up here with something like 7-7-8, then that'd be crazy. I guess he could have a 7 high straight here. Pretty reasonable. Although for pot, I mean, that'd be pretty sick. And King Jack 9 deuce turned flush draw against the 8 high straight. That is a scooper duper by Actionfreak, taking down a massive pot. Can we get a clip of that? Poor Phil. I believe he had a 9. I believe he had a 9 blocking the 89, but that was irrelevant as Freak's 48 scooping that one. Big swings today. That's a lot of run at once subs. Funny, Lolatax. Funny. Here we have a 3-bet pot from Phil on 10-8-6 Rainbow. Playing his check on a pretty lockdown semi-static board. Fine to see it. Fine to see it. Trying to get an equity realization. And stab from Freak in position. Yeah, if last session that I casted Phil was a B+, he's not getting a B+ today. That is correct. Although he's always getting better than a B+ in my heart. You know. Anyway, Phil, check call. Oh, no. I'm anticipating the check call. It'd be pretty crazy if he just check folds this board. Let's be real. Oh, there we go. Check raise. Small raise. Don't really believe this, although Phil has a propensity to check raise small with his straights and straight draws. He's shown a strong willingness, even on very dynamic textures like Queen Jack 8 flush draw, to check raise 10-9 small. Freak consents, possibly thinking Phil's out of line a little bit, and Phil trying to decide if he barrels this puppy off. Are we still in action? Looks like a little stream problem. Little bit of a stream problem. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, Phil betting river, not setting up stacks on the river again. If they call SPR 1.15 or 1.2 on the river, weird. I don't get this. But Phil's doing it. Flicking in third pot on both tables. Looks like Phil has been 3-betting a lot after he just got scooper dupered against that 8 high straight. Wow. Phil put to the test. Actionfreak is all in. Phil's small sizing possibly being targeted by Actionfreak. Pretty dynamic texture over on Luke. Does Phil pounce on it? Can leverage a lot of his made hands with his draws here. There it is. Now, Freak has to ask himself, can he push equity with a bet 3-bet, or is he trying to realize equity and keep Phil's bluffs in? He chooses the latter. Big turn for whoever is drawing here. Both players can have straights, so it's difficult to attribute an advantage to anyone, although Phil should have more stronger made hands weaker than straights that are uncomfortable here. He pots it, doesn't care whatsoever. Rolled SIGs, that's about accurate. Sounds about right. Is Phil, I mean, if Phil has something like a wrap with a flush draw, he wants to go with it. He does have the 60 nut, oh my goodness, we have nuts with nut redraw against nuts with second nut redraw, and Phil drills the diamond. Swati, to answer your question, Phil said basically no one studies 200 BB plus poker, but he thinks he's slightly better at it. Jack deuce 3 rainbow, typically favoring the in-position player, although it's kind of hard to connect with this texture. Phil setting up a potential triple here, keeping himself uncapped, betting half pot on the flop. Freak consents off to a very dynamic turn, 7 of hearts. Does Phil want to continue? This deep, I expect almost all of his sets to continue barreling. Any jacks up, the occasional deuce 3 for protection. He pots it. Freak's sitting out on the other table. This might be one of our last hands we play today. Unclear. Might just be a break. Could be a big one. Man, if there's a raise here, such a gross spot for so many of Phil's hands. Does Freak continues big river for Actionfreak. The way this spot plays is Phil has a bunch of bluffs and some full houses. A lot of his two pairs just got counterfeited. Phil has a lot of hands that might want to bluff here, and Actionfreak's overpair is just strongly improved. Does Phil go for it? He's loading the gun. $32,000 in the middle. Euros, technically. Phil's thinking about it. Would he bet turn with something like 7-3 deuce 3? Would he even bet flop with 7-3? He has the gutter and the kings with jack, with hearts, winning at showdown, up about 200K on the challenge, down about 200K on the day. Congratulations, Jake, on landing a girlfriend. Unfortunate, she knows the term net. Probably minus EV in your relationships for her to be aware of it. Little third pot bet here. Phil had been going quite small on something, a texture like this. He's been going like a fifth pot before. So for him to go third pot, he's moving up the sizing, probably because he's so deep. Thematically consistent with how he should be adjusting his bet sizings. Love to see it. Do we get the barrel off here? Something like ace 7 of hearts going to comfortably triple off. He pots it. Tough spot for basically everything that Freak has. He's going to have to call basically his jack high flushes plus here, or lower flushes with straight flush blockers. Also all of his sets continuing, and then some of his like two pairs with big hearts. Does Phil go for it? Opportunity for a 90 or like an 80K pot here. Something like that. Does he pot it? Major decision here. Flicking in a car. Tank. Check. You hate to see it. Bad news for Phil. Big picture. Weakest he might be going for value is something like a king eye flush here. You just hate when you pot the king eye flush and run into the, oh man, he had the nut blocker and his opponent had the jack high flush and checks back. Hours and hours. Phil thinks on such a high level, he's probably factoring that into his play when he checks checks river there, but I don't know. I just kind of like going for it. When you can stick in a buy-in on the river and you feasibly have the nuts, and it's basically impossible for them to have the nuts. Oh boy, you guys know what this is. God, that horn, it's starting to tilt me, I'm not going to lie. But I'm the one doing it. Here we have a 4-bet. Phil, 200 BBs deep. A lot of room to maneuver here. We've already seen a 12th pot size bets in 5-bet pots. Oh, man. Oh, man. Phil, if he did 3-bet kings, is going to see this flop. Potential for a massive cooler here. Phil down something like 200,000. Oh, man, if I could 4-bet sacks, I would. I would. Oh, 2/3 bet, pretty much committing him. Assume to see something like overpair nut gutter, ace 6/8 or something like that. Also at this stack depth, totally feasible for him to be 4-betting king and betting this sizing. Phil has to wonder if he jams here, does he have any fold equity? Queen 6/8/9 double, possibly wanting to rip this in, possibly committing suicide. Phil calls. I mean, on this turn, come on, how does the money not go in? Once Phil peels flop, he should be peeling with basically all of his pair plus draws, as they're doing quite well against ace-ace. Does Phil jam? He hits this turn quite frequently. We could be seeing some fireworks here. Possibility for over 100K pot. This is Actionfreak, Chris Harsh. Oh, he goes for it. Oh my goodness. Any 2-pair, any pair plus big draw. And it's all in. Flip him over. What you got? King 10, 9, 6 against ace, king, jack, 8. Let's go, Phil. Super dominated hand. And he drills that puppy. Oh, here it goes, guys. 3-bet pot on king, queen, 7, 2-tone. Super dynamic texture. Could see a big one. If Phil bets here, he's opening himself up to being taken out into deep water. Here we see the half pot. He can be going half pot with all of his strong hands as well, so he is protected against a raise here. No need to just pot your king this deep. Decent amount of value in protecting your smaller bet sizing. Brick on the turn. Phil's strongly incentivized to be jamming this turn. We can very easily see a pot size bet here with a lot of Phil's good hands, even as weak as overpairs. Does he do it? There it is. Pot on the turn. Freak in a cage. Is Freak slow playing? How strong is Phil? We have the potential for a huge pot here. Give the people what they want. Raise it. Oh, man, this is sadly, I mean, we can see a bet and a call, but we're hardly ever going to ever see a bet call. Bit of an action killer. Jack of clubs. Honestly, it's a bit of a toss-up who it favors. Going to be slightly more straights for the in-position player, but higher quality flushes for Phil. He plays as check, maybe trying to get to showdown with king, queen, 10-9, something like that. Or is he trying to check raise with the nut flush? Would be something. There it is, Broadway against top 2. Note, as you see, top 2 with gutter for Freak in position, choosing not to raise turn. 6 glasses of water gone. Don't think I'm restocking. Whoever took the under on 7, I think you won. We're just scotch from here on out. Oh, Gazzy, I got a little Glenfiddich 14. Got to balance. You never want to be over bluffing. Got to make sure you have enough scotch to water ratio. We're at 6 glasses, Mr. Curtin, but I'm too tired to get up at this point. I know you had over 7. Good guess. Do we see someone rep a wheel? Nobler Than You sounds like you have to return some videotapes. Have a good time. Phil potting it. Well, I asked, are we going to see someone rep a wheel? It appears so. Oh, we get a call, and he has nut, ladies and gentlemen. Runner, 6 high straight, and with that freak, maybe a little salty, Galfond with a massive comeback. Oh, we get a call, and he has nut, ladies and gentlemen. Runner, 6 high straight, and with that freak, maybe a little salty, Galfond with a massive comeback.